Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here this evening. This is the opportunity I have to call the meeting in order for Monday, May 8th, 2023. Ms. Peck, would you please call roll?
John Kreischer.
Here.
Pat McKee.
Here.
Lance Trollope.
Here.
Joanna Reyes.
Here.
Jennifer Paoli. Corey Sillers.
Here.
Jim Boucher.
Here. Please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It is the mission of the Wausau School District to advance student learning, achievement, and success. And our first agenda item today will be our opportunity for the community to speak. With that, let me say I would like to recognize speakers and students who wish to make a public comment. But before we do that, let me just go through a couple of guidelines. The board recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on district matters. Please identify yourself by name and state your address. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 3 minutes in duration. Ms. Peck will identify the timeline that you have left. Speakers shall direct all comments to the board and not to staff or other participants. Public comments may not identify specific personnel or students by name or through the use of sufficiently detailed description so as to identify the individual staff or student. The presiding officer values civic discourse and may interrupt, terminate, or prohibit comments that do not adhere by the rules. But with that, I'm sure we'll have no problem, and we can continue with our first individual to speak.
Before you.
You want,
Yeah,
if we could take a pause, Dr. Hills, would you like to make a comment?
please, yes. So before we get to public comment, first of all, I want to say welcome. We know that many people are hurting. And over the last few weeks, we've heard from students and staff and community members and parents. And we want you to know that we're listening and we hear you. And in difficult times such as these, we all need to help each other and work together. That means making sure we're doing everything we can to meet our students' needs, getting them the help they need when they need it, and coming together as adults to find the best path forward to achieve our common goals. So please know that our schools are your schools. Our doors are always open. And that said, we also have to follow state laws and the policies and procedures that we have in place to handle these situations. So for instance, our school board members are not allowed to get involved in personnel matters, but we are all open to sitting down to discuss those paths to accomplish our common goals of supporting our students and our families and our staff. So thank you.
And with that, let me start with Jody Krieg. And please forgive me if I mispronounce your name. I sometimes do that, even though I'm an ex-English teacher. I try not to do it, but it happens. There.
Sure, yeah. You just don't turn screen.
I am here representing, Jody Krieg, 729 South Fifth Ave, Wausau. I am here representing a collective voice for the 65 members of the East faculty and staff who have signed this statement. As East teachers and staff, we embrace diversity. We respect and value all of our students and take seriously the Safe Schools videos on harassment that we are required to watch. We work diligently to create a safe and welcoming space accepting of all students. We possess cultural competence in our approaches to teaching and learning. We are saddened by what has transpired and do not condone what has led us to this point. It is our hope that the public, especially our beloved and respected Hmong community, along with the board, recognize that this is not indicative of all staff conduct. We are deeply committed to the vision and practice that students from different places and of different races belong to and deserve a respectful, caring, and nurturing learning space. We stand united in our advocacy for all students.
Thank you, Ms. Krieg. Our next speaker, Tavon.
Can you hit the button on that mic?
There you go. There you go.
Leave it. Thank you.
Tuan Vongpakdi, 5206 Winding Creek Drive. I'm here today as a very concerning father. I'm concerned about my son's mental health, and the trauma he's gone through, caused by his band teacher. He didn't ask for this. He didn't deserve any of this. My son has depression, fear, anxiety of going to school because there's no safety plan for him by the school district. And he's not doing well right now because there's victim blaming going on right now. It's unfair to him. Let me tell you, during the investigation, when the teacher was on leave, my son was happy. He was being a kid. He was enjoying his time in school with no stress. Doesn't have to look behind his back. He worked very hard. Memorizing his lines for the last high school play. He wanted to put on a great performance for everyone. And he did. He came through, put on the best performance I've seen, and I was very proud and happy with my son. I was happy that he was smiling, laughing with his peers after the show. His smiles means the world to me because he hasn't been smiling for a while since the harassment started. But that was short-lived because the school district allowed this teacher back in the classroom. My son smile faded away again. It breaks my heart. I can't see my son smile. He's got a beautiful smile. But we're a strong family. We're going to continue to fight and be his voice and tell his story. I want to show you my son's smile right after his last performance of his school play. I want you to know that there's only one victim here. That's my son. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Next speaker, Jennifer and Kong Yang.
So in case our time was cut short, I invited my sister to make the second half of the statement, to use her time as well. Do you want us to say both her names right now, or
Go ahead.
if she has? Okay, Jennifer Yang, 2280 Ricky Drive, Cornwall.
Kwai Dang, 1311 Young Street, Wausau.
We trusted you to follow your procedures and make the right legal and ethical decision. I apologize for these racial slurs, but this teacher has used the words monkey, chink, faggot, and ching chong. These are the words used in his classroom. These words do not make us feel uneasy. These words are filled with hate and make us feel intense pain because they attack our dignity and our worth. These words have great impact. When the district reinstated this teacher, you re-victimized my nephew once again. He would like you to know what you and this teacher have done to him. And I quote, "I have never felt as devalued, dehumanized, and vulnerable as I feel now. This oppression is unfathomable compared to the outcome of the racism. This is the cumulative result of all of this. Let that sink in." By bringing this teacher back because you believe he deserves another chance, you have silenced my nephew's voice and diminished his worth and dignity. He victimized my nephew 7 times and never once apologized. When the principal asked him to contact parents and apologize, he didn't, and he said he wasn't ready to have that conversation. This teacher saw my nephew in his class, saw his mom at work, and never once approached them to apologize or take responsibility. You should be disgusted that this is happening in your school. You do not have the right to use his trauma to justify bringing in a consultant if you cannot even protect him or the other students in your classrooms from this teacher. We will not permit you to use my nephew's pain as a call for educational opportunity, to promote cultural awareness without first holding this teacher accountable to the highest standard. You said my nephew should be commended for doing the right thing. Yes, he should be celebrated. My nephew is well liked by his classmates and teachers. He is a leader on the National Honor Society, Rotary, and Student Cabinet, voted onto prom and homecoming court by his peers. He is kind and compassionate and brave enough to say that this behavior is wrong. Yet you toss him and his mom, a well-respected Wausau School District employee with 18 years of service, you toss them aside. You invalidate their comments, explaining away their concerns because it was not with harmful intent. Not one administrator has checked on my nephew's doing. No safety plan was put in place to protect him from this teacher or the retaliation that is happening right now in your schools. The band students were told this teacher was coming back before our family was. They were pulled out of class to celebrate this teacher's return, while my nephew can barely get out of bed. He's had to endure so much victim blaming. You had an opportunity to make all these wrongs right, yet the district decides to be complicit in racism, sexism, and homophobia. With each decision the district has made with our case, you can finish.
With each decision the district has made with our case, you have further dehumanized and devalued my nephew, my family, and marginalized communities. That is injustice. We refuse to be gaslighted by your insulting tactics and ridiculous justification. We ask for justice. We implore the school board to invoke your authority and take swift steps to remove this teacher so that we can never hurt a child in your district again with this hateful language and behavior.
Thank you.
I'd like to present the accountability demands and for reparation on behalf of the Hmong and Lao community of Wausau and AAPI community.
Thank you. Thank you. Catherine Plick.
If we could make room, if you could sit in front of this front row and make room for the people in the back, that could be kind of cool, if possible. Hi, my name is Catherine Pleer. My mother is Amy Pleer, former chair of the Wausau Community Foundation. I live at 14 North Hoyle Road on the east side. So dear school board, let's take a collective breath, just breathe in, just feel ourselves in our body, because remember that these stories are in our bodies as well. This is a deeply personal and empathetic matter. And this goes beyond the maze of paperwork and policies put in place to prevent accountability and ignore racism in this community. Dear board, and the white people in this room, if you're feeling a little called out, then you're getting a glimpse of what it feels like to be an Asian American at East every single day. I am a 2016 graduate of Wausau East. I was adopted by a loving white family, and I was adopted during the one-child policy. I'm Chinese and lesbian. Wow, coming out just becomes easier and easier, you know. It's been a while. Music was my life at East. As a pianist and a singer in choir, a snare drummer, I wrote arrangements for the marching band, and I directed the music for Saturday Night Live in our school play. So now I am the music director at the famous Second City in Chicago. I have a successful and lucrative career in music in Chicago while playing dueling pianos and directing music. I drove almost 300 miles to tell you this, that my experience at East helped set up my career in music, but not from the support from Perkins, the person that we're talking about, but actually as an act of endurance to his bullying, his racism, homophobia, and his lack of musical support and musical competency. And I'm now telling you this as someone who's doing music professionally in a huge city. As a director of Second City, I've heard much better jokes than I've heard at East. Like, how do Asian parents name their kids? They throw a can down the stairs. Ching chang chong. Or I remember one of the white students, the same one who gave me a death threat that the teacher knew about and didn't do anything about, who snapped a percussion instrument called a whip crack behind the ear of a black student and said, "Does that remind you of something of your past?" I know a lot better jokes than that, but that's what I went through. I directed the field show, and he wouldn't even rehearse my musical arrangements for more than 15 to 30 minutes, even though they were very well written and they were also hard to do, so that his musical arrangements in the same show sounded better. He did not support me when I was writing arrangements. When he would debut them at games, he would try to debut them before I came back from another rehearsal, and then he used me as a scapegoat for any musical mistakes. This goes past educating the teacher. We are so past that. We've tried that in person over and over and over again behind closed doors and really painful and problematic conversations. I can tell you because I've tried, with the support of my white parents, to no avail. We are past education. Racism is not a legacy that you should want to protect. Holding the teacher's career accountable by replacing him with someone that shows musical excellence, cultural competency, and emotional intelligence, and helps students with actual career readiness is imperative, because I did not trust this teacher to write a letter of recommendation when I went on to graduate with honors in music and create a professional, successful career in Chicago. So with that, show us that we are worthy of being protected. Stop Asian hate and protect us in solidarity.
Thank you. Next speaker is Christine Song.
Christine Psalm, 3312 North 11th Street, Wausau. Thank you for letting me talk with you tonight. I'm sorry I have to be here. I'm sorry any of the people in this room have to be here tonight. We're in a tough place right now. During Black History Month, many of you know, we had a student panel in February where a number of Wausau East students told us about some mistreatments they experienced. I know there was a school board member present too, and we heard very clearly that there were some pretty serious issues happening with our students, with other students bullying, and even with teachers. During Asian American Week at DC Everest 2 weeks ago, there were some issues. Students used racial slurs and mocked among students who wore their traditional dress to school, and now we're grappling with allegations against a teacher in our district. We need to face that our community has the same issues faced by every other community across the country. People from marginalized communities are frequently targeted and made to feel uncomfortable, sometimes unsafe in our schools. While we're here to discuss one incident, I'm here to tell you, and you know, this is a systemic problem. Wausau School District has some issues, and I don't feel that you're addressing them effectively as an administration, as a board. I am extremely impressed that the teachers were here to support the Hmong community tonight. That is awesome. And but there are still issues with other teachers. You need to recognize that. You need to make sure your policies are up to date. 2018, there were some big changes in how you have staff address issues of diversity. And I sure hope your policy is updated, because I don't think how you responded shows me that you're meeting that criteria. So please take a look at that. It's time to start having conversations beyond cultural sensitivity training. I think the young lady that was just up here just said that very clearly. We need to foster open and honest discussions. We need to have hard conversations. You need to recognize that you are not the experts in this area. When there is an issue with any community of color or marginalized community, you hold the position of power as white people. That you are holding the position of power as white people who get to determine how people are held accountable, and that's got to stop. The people that determine how to hold others accountable when their community has been harmed are people from that community. And if you are making those decisions without the Hmong community present and at the table, that is not okay. That cannot happen anymore. You can bring a Black consultant in to talk, but this happened to the Hmong community, and there are many super talented or qualified people in the Hmong community that could have helped you to work through this. We wouldn't be here right now had you done that. I have never met a more forgiving group of people, but you excluded their voices. You excluded them from even being part of the process. That doesn't show me that you're culturally aware, that your policies are up to date. We've got to do better. That's enough of this. This can't happen anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Yi-Ling Zhang.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Yi-Ling Zhang, 4809 Augustine Avenue, Weston, Wisconsin. Today I will be reading a statement from Lorna Young, a Milwaukee resident who is on the executive committee of the AAPI Coalition of Wisconsin and is a co-chair of the Coalition Education Committee. In my role as co-chair of the AAPI Coalition of Wisconsin Education Committee, I recall that in January 2022, the Wausau School Board supported the Wisconsin Association of School Board resolution to develop an educational curriculum and professional training to teach the history, culture, and contributions of the AAPI community to the economic, culture, and social development of Wisconsin and the USA. This resolution was supported by the statewide WASB General Assembly. We appreciate the leadership of your board president, Jane Boucher, who is also on the WASB Board of Directors, in supporting this resolution. The intent of the WASB resolution has been to build greater awareness, knowledge, and understanding of our diverse AAPI community so that all students are better prepared to be productive citizens in an increasingly changing world and to foster the development of positive relationships, self-image, and identity of AAPI students across Wisconsin. It is evident that although your board voted for the WASB resolution, very little has been done by your school district to fulfill its intent. We are extremely disappointed in your school district's decision to reinstate a band teacher at East High School despite his racist, sexist, and homophobic conduct. The individual has fostered a hostile classroom environment, revealing a pattern of harmful conduct, which your school administration has acknowledged but dismissed as not rising to the level of discrimination or harassment. Your school district has a long way to go to create a supporting learning environment for all your students. Did you know that in Wisconsin, your school district has the largest population of AAPI students of 20% in your school district, and that Hmong and Lao Americans comprise the largest Asian American population of Wisconsin? Wausau should be taking the lead in Wisconsin to demonstrate that your teachers in all subjects from kindergarten through 12th grade are positive role models. Teachers should lead and guide and not humiliate, make fun, and dehumanize students. Any teacher who exhibits a behavior that is discriminatory and offensive undermines the very essence of education and sets a negative example for their students and your community. The AAPI Coalition supports the Wausau community leaders and the Von Paki family's list of demands being presented today. Please confirm your prior yes vote for the WASB resolution by following up with actions so that the Wausau School District can become a model in Wisconsin and across the United States for a positive and inclusive learning environment, particularly for AAPI students. We also look to you to endorse the Wisconsin's current Senate Bill 240 and Assembly Bill 232 to show your continued support for an instructional program and professional training of Hmong American, Asian Americans in our K-12 public schools. This month is AAPI Heritage Month. The heritage of Hmong Americans and Asian Americans is integral to the fabric of Wisconsin. Thank you.
Mary Tao.
Mary Tao, 506 Sherman Street, Wausau, Wisconsin, 54401. Board members, I'd like to read the document that I handed out in front of you to go on record, which was written by your highest leader in the Wausau School District. And it reads, yes, if a parent appeals it to DPI, the problem with sharing information with the board is that if our plan does not go well, and we need further discipline, it could still come to the board. It continues to say, as to communications, we have been advised to be quiet. The less we say, the quicker this passes by. How dishonorable of the highest leader of your school district to devalue the Asian American community in this way. This sends a clear message that our Asian American children have no value or priority by the Wausau School District. Showing prejudice against marginalized groups is systematically part of your Wausau School District DNA, from the top down. Our issue only begins with your band teacher at East High School. By doing nothing, board members, you continue to be an enabler of a harmful culture that has been long normalized by your institution. Board members, how can I trust and have confidence in the highest leader of your organization and your district administrators after reading an awful portrayal of our Asian American kids and us in that message? I challenge you, all of you, shake down your organization and discipline your leaders who have failed to stop these recurrences and failed to provide EV and other children an equal academic career. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tao. Tina Parker. Tim Parker.
That's okay.
It
I'll answer
blurred.
to Tina.
It
That's
blurred. It was in the rain.
no problem. Hi, my name is Tim Parker, and I live at 6 North Hill Road in Wausau. I'm the president and CEO of the Community Foundation of North Central Wisconsin, and I'm the founding board member of Mosaic of North Central Wisconsin. I'm going to read Mosaic's vision. All individuals in North Central Wisconsin, regardless of their differences, feel that they belong and are supported, welcomed, and included as members of our communities. That's the vision for Mosaic. That's our vision for North Central Wisconsin. And the Community Foundation reflects this vision through their shared value, which is named belonging. We celebrate all races, cultures, identities, and other differences. We also stand in solidarity with the Asian American community in condemning all acts of racism. Racism does not create the safe and healthy environment each person deserves to experience. Every single member of our community should feel welcome and know that they belong here. It's difficult to assess a situation from the outside when all public responses about the situation are generic and non-descriptive. In fact, the statement that was published could have been on file for ages, simply ready for use when any type of event takes place. You must find a way to be open about and remorseful for what transpired. Although you surely followed the advice of counsel, please know that your response has created more division than the rejection that you are avoiding for the sake of growth. Well, here we are, and what do we do now? We find common ground in a way that we can move ahead. To move forward, would Wausau East consider the following? Please acknowledge that there's only one victim here. The statement does not mention this person. In fact, the only potential reference to the victim is where the statement says, we engage all parties in learning. What does the victim need to learn? Or said another way, What do you feel qualified to teach this victim at this point because of this experience? Please put yourself in the shoes of the victim. Please demonstrate one of kindergarten's basic teachings of apologizing when you've done something wrong and do so publicly. Please outline the criteria that escalate a situation to the level of harassment or discrimination. People are curious to know what level of racism results in what kind of actions. If there are levels, you have metrics. Please consider an open investigation where stakeholders can learn what really happened. When everything is internal, guarded, and private, you lose trust whether you deserve to or not. The only way to regain trust is to become transparent. Please do this for the sake of the victim, the school system, and for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Next speaker, Joel Lewis.
Moving a little slow today, sorry. All right. Thank you all for letting me speak and letting everyone else speak. My name is Joel Lewis. I live at 807 Turner Street, 54403. I'll be honest, when I first heard about this, I didn't know about the student or anything like that. All I knew was the accusations against the teacher, who has been a teacher for two of our older children. So I was shocked. I wasn't aware that this kind of behavior was allowed or was happening. And my first thought was, is this a student maybe that has got bad grades or something and wanted to get back at the teacher, right? That was my first thought. But then I started to see all of the violations that came out and that some of them the teacher admitted to. And then I saw that it's the child of a person that's worked for the district for 18 years. So that further legitimized what I'm reading and what I'm learning about. And it just broke my heart because I think that our number one goal when we're educating our kids is to make a safe space for them so that they can feel comfortable and able to grow and able to become who they want to be. Like this young woman I heard, who's living in Chicago and living their dream now, right? Like we need to foster an environment that allows for more people to do that. And so I hope that we will seriously consider revisiting what's happened here and figuring out how we can set up some sort of protocol so that it's not continuing to happen in the classroom. I think that white people have gotten comfortable saying and doing things that aren't always right. And maybe they don't even always know that they're offending people. But it's still wrong, right? So the fact is that he said and did things that made this student feel uncomfortable. And to hear his father speak about it breaks my heart even further. I know his father for a long time. I know him to be a very good person as well. And so I hope that we can somehow do what's right here and make sure that no student has to face this kind of fear or feel like they're not welcome in the classroom. So thank you.
Next speaker, Ron Alexander.
Thank you. My name is Ron Alexander. I'm from 15420 Brandenburg Avenue in the Village of Maine in the Wausau School District. I stand with our Asian American leaders demanding justice for our community for the extremely inappropriate and offensive racial slurs, sexist language, and homophobic comments made by a high school band teacher in the classroom, and specifically for the harm done to a family and their son. I support an appeal of the decision made by the superintendent at whatever level the family feels appropriate. Furthermore, I believe that this is not an isolated incident. There is evidence of racism throughout the Wausau School District. In addition to the reported offensive incident last year by a teacher at West High towards our Native American community, this past February, I was at a panel discussion at East High for Black History Month. 6 students of color reported on specific examples of racism they had personally experienced from fellow students and teachers. The examples were numerous, astounding, and very alarming, even including ample use of the N-word. This is unacceptable behavior and must change. I'm also aware of recurrent racial slurs by students at a grade school in the district. I agree with the hiring of a qualified consultant to advise on cultural sensitivity, but I believe their role should include doing an audit of all schools in the district through interviewing administrators, teachers, and students to get a baseline on the racist behavior that is occurring and to design a comprehensive remediation program for the student body and staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Catherine Silheran. Hope I haven't killed it.
My name is Catherine Sullivan. I live on North 16th Ave, Wausau, Wisconsin. I graduated in 2020 at Wausau West, and my mother was a graduate at Wausau East. She came from Laos during the Vietnam War, and when she started school, it was essential for her to learn the common language. Many others, including herself, were bullied for the way they spoke English, maybe how they dressed as well. My parents drove through countless obstacles to provide their children a great life in America, and I can't thank them enough. This is the case for many Asian Americans whose parents were able to escape the war and build a great life for the next generation. When COVID-19 happened, we were blamed and mocked by many groups of people, and that came along with many racial slurs, acts of violence, and threats towards Asian people. And at one point, I was worried for my grandparents' safety. The situation we are dealt with is not a learning opportunity, because it's already been known that racial inequality has always existed. But it seems that's always being swept under the rug. You can't dismiss racism just because it hasn't directly affected your own child. Every child in America deserves the right to a great education in a safe and inclusive environment. We need to hold people accountable for their lack of character and ill behavior, especially teachers and staff who are expected to hold a standard of integrity and respect. Any form of racism or discrimination negatively impacts a student's psychological, physical, and academic performance. An institution that claims that they welcome everyone and provide a safe environment to learn in should hold themselves to that basic standard. We may have learned how to find an angle of a triangle or learn about the Boston Tea Party, but when will our schools teach people to stand up for what's right and address issues like this and take it seriously? When will you practice what you preach? I think about when I have kids and fear my own kids will have to face what my mother and I had to face while getting an education here. And I can speak for all of my Asian American peers when we ask, when will this cycle end? I don't want to come back in this room as a mother and deal with the same issue. And I will say, from now until that day comes, something like this will occur. But we will look to the people in power to make sure there are actions being made to deter the racism that lives among our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Speaker Alexandra Sullivan.
Hello, my name is Alexandra Sullivan. I live on North 16th Avenue, Wausau, Wisconsin. I graduated Wausau West last spring as valedictorian, and I addressed my classmates as a student speaker. I also worked as a TA here at the Wausau School District. Currently, I attend the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, where I study biochemistry with an emphasis in pre-optometry together with music. In regards to this matter, I'm disappointed, frustrated, heartbroken, outraged at this point. The behavior that was exhibited and the actions that were taken to resolve the situation was completely and utterly unacceptable. Discriminations towards gender, race, sexual orientation, etc. should not be tolerated. Unfortunately, I'm aware that this sort of behavior is tolerated because I have dealt with my fair share of racism. Flashback to freshman year, where a substitute teacher demanded I speak English. This resulted in my white peers laughing at that cheap joke that was made because this individual demonstrated that it was appropriate to be not just disrespectful, but racist. I was left to suppress my emotions of embarrassment and confusion, asking myself, why did this happen to me? Did I deserve it? How is it okay for a full-grown adult to make racist remarks toward a student just wanting to learn algebra? This is not just a microaggression. This is racism. This matter should not have been deemed a learning opportunity. Quite frankly, to me, a learning opportunity is to the degree of not studying for an exam, failing it, then learning that you can prevent this from happening by studying. Just because you have never experienced any sort of discrimination in your life does not mean it does not exist. Racism is a serious matter. Let me reiterate. Any sort of discrimination should not be tolerated. Leaving the Wausau School District last spring, I had hope for change. I spoke about how we must be more mindful to everyone in our community and respect the differences between us all. There's no room for hate or discrimination in my life, but to hear and see this disgusting behavior towards anyone is absolutely heartbreaking. I should be focusing on my academics, but I can't. This matter has affected me to the point where I've lost sleep because I'm worried about the mental, emotional, and physical state of those back home in Wausau. We need to hold those in power accountable. Please do better and be better. The Asian community will no longer be silenced. Our voices will be heard. Thank you.
Just for the board's sake, usually we go about 30 minutes, 35 minutes for speakers and that. I'm encouraging that we continue and listen to everybody. Would you all agree? Yes. Okay, we'll continue. Next speaker, Kino Langhofang.
My name is Kino Banglafon. I live in 120 Grand Avenue, Wausau, Wisconsin. Good evening, board members. And I'm the now president of Wausau organization in Wausau and graduated from Wausau East 1994. I'm here to respectfully ask you to take action and do what's the right thing for Wong-Pak-Lee family. The world is watching and waiting to hear from you to do the right thing, to act the right way to the family. Educators are held as a high standard of there should be zero tolerance to enable to use the racism and homophobic statement for fun. This is promoted high health. This doesn't promote a healthy learning environment of our children in Wausau. So I don't have much to say, a very short one, but I hope you do the right thing and act the right way for the family or for the community. And we're all here to support each other. And I do love school. I love Wausau East High School, graduated from Wausau High School, and I respect all the board members and our teachers back in 1994. Thank you.
Bao Yang, Vang rather, excuse me, Bao Vang.
Boley Vang. I reside at 1204 Harlan Ave in Rothschild, Wisconsin. Good evening. I'm here as a concerned citizen and an aunt to several Wausau School District students. So I was born here in Wausau. I recently just became a resident of Rothschild, and for the most part of my adult life, I've always been open to sharing my thoughts and experiences, supporting why I think Central Wisconsin, primarily Wausau, is a good place to live and raise a family. However, upon learning about the traumatic experiences of Wausau East student initials EV and the determination of the district's investigation looking into this matter, I became sick to my stomach, as you can tell. At that point, I wanted to take back every positive thing I said about Wausau. However, I know that wouldn't be fair, so I didn't. I will, however, share with you that I am extremely hurt and angry. I stand in solidarity with the Vong Pakdi family and the Asian community, and every student who feels hurt by this entire situation and the district administration's determination. I need you all to know that there are so many Wausau families that are hurting right now. Despite corroborating evidence of the Wausau East Band Director's repeated inappropriate and offensive behavior, it was determined that his behavior did not rise to the level of discrimination and harassment, and he was granted reinstatement. The district's determination didn't address his gross misconduct nor mention reparation for those who he harmed. This sends a really strong message to our community, and that message is that racist, sexist, and homophobic behavior is acceptable in our schools, and that is absolutely not acceptable. I urge you to think about how the district's determination has and will continue to negatively impact our students and their families and possibly their mental and emotional well-being. The Wausau School District's mission is to advance student learning, achievement, and success. I'm here, along with so many others, demanding action and accountability towards that mission by first creating a safe space, a healthy and comfortable learning environment for all students, and that means including all those from different protected classes. Thank you.
Next speaker, Tom Killian.
Good evening. Tom Killian, 133 East Thomas Street, Wausau. I'm going to echo my earlier sentiments. I stand here today in solidarity with the belief that invariably learning environments for our children should provide the soil in which they feel comfortable and thrive. Education is not just a composite of textbooks and exams, but also a civic curriculum that should reflect our community's values and commitments. The community places its confidence in our schools, while families place their kids in those schools' classrooms. By doing so, we are placing our trust in a system, and we expect that system to elevate children, and I mean all children. So as students in Wausau receive quizzes and tests through which their performance will be measured, we must ask ourselves, through what metrics does the school environment and system grade itself? The administration's response has left those measurements unclear, creating confusion and disappointment rather than clarity and confidence. From its figurative desk, a large part of the community is now raising its hand to ask a question. It is raising its hand to ask how the administration handles these types of concerns from our students and youth. It is raising its hand to ask if there really is a process in place through which these student concerns are addressed clearly, legitimately, justly, and in a manner that fosters the most inclusive and positive environment possible. Educators hold a special role that comes with the highest of standards and expectations, and those must be upheld to properly support and elevate children, and I mean all children. Thank you.
Ming Zhang.
Mei Zhang, 2012 Weston Ave in Schofield. I don't even know where to begin because I am so infuriated by this. Let's say that the roles were reversed and it was an Asian American student who did this to a Caucasian student. What would your response be? Let's be real. Would your response be the same if the roles were reversed? Ask yourself that question. Every single student living and breathing in this world deserves to be loved, protected, and respected. It is a human right to be treated with respect and dignity, no matter what room you're in. You have a moral obligation to make sure that your students feel this way. How dare you not do your jobs as educators? How dare you? I am grateful that I do not live in this school district because I would be remorse if I allowed my kids to attend this school and to be treated this way. Also, all of the other microaggressions, all the other comments that were made today, it doesn't even matter if this student was an A student or an F student. It doesn't matter. Every kid deserves a chance. Every single kid. If you are planting a flower, you do not just throw away the flower. You cultivate it. You make sure that the nutrients in the soil that you are feeding this flower allows it to grow. That is the impact that you guys have to each and every student that you serve, that you should humbly serve, that you should not forget about. I am deeply appalled by the response that was made. Tim Parker mentioned kindergarten. I think everybody has to go back to kindergarten because we teach children at a very young age to talk respectfully, to be respectful to everybody, and to say sorry when you make a mistake. That still has not yet happened, and I am deeply appalled by that. We will not be quiet. Change needs to be made, and this is systemic. You need to recognize that what you did is wrong. You will be held accountable, as will this teacher. Let that sink in. You guys are directly impacting the future of this community, the future of the world, the future of the nation. How dare you tell them that this type of behavior is acceptable? How dare you? You have a chance to do the right thing and to make change, and that is today. Thank you.
Next speaker, Ellie Koplitz.
Hi, my name is Elisandra Koplitz. I live at 2280 Ricky Drive, Croninwetter, Wisconsin, 54455. Hold on. My cousin is one of the biggest role models in my life. He's not just a role model to me, but he's a role model at school, in the theater community, at his job, and to his family. He's inspired me to come and talk about how racism has affected me. I am 12 years old in 6th grade, and my first incident with racism was in 4th grade. This one boy would pull his eyes to make slanted eyes and would only look at me and laugh. I never knew what that meant, so I just didn't worry about it. He kept doing this until one day, it was the last hour of school, and there was something I didn't want to tell him and his friends. They proceeded to say things like, go back to China, eat some ramen, and go back to where you belong. Our teacher wasn't in the room, but our student teacher was. After the boys said that, I cried. It hurt a lot knowing someone has that kind of hatred. My best friend was the only one who comforted me and stood up for me. Those boys were suspended, yet you guys won't do anything about this case. My cousin is hurting, and just knowing that this grown adult won't have a punishment and these boys did is just sad. Thank you for listening to me.
Call you, Jean.
Wausau School Board. Kajua Jean, 6106 Thomas Avenue, Weston. Today I will be reading a statement from a person who has gone through this. My name is Olivia, and I am sharing some of the most detrimental times of abuse and exploitation that I've endured in the Wausau East Band under the direction of the band director. He would go out of his way to target my brother in front of the band, sometimes jokingly, sometimes aggressively, and short-tempered. I very clearly remember that this teacher would call my brother the Mexican, Cheech, Pedro, etc., which made me uncomfortable because my brother has a name. The teacher was being jokingly but blatantly racist by calling my brother's racial slurs. When I informed him how uncomfortable that made me, he apologized and told me he'll keep that in mind. From freshman year to senior year, he did not keep that in mind. After the next few years, it got substantially worse. For summer lessons with my brother, the teacher introduced us as the Mexicans, Mexican 1 and Mexican 2. Even being a freshman, I internally rolled my eyes at the ignorance and told myself, this man is racist. He seems to think it's funny. I was uncomfortable. There were numerous times where this teacher belligerently lashed out at students around me and towards me. When he gets angry, he will literally yell until he's red in the face. If you had a match in front of his face, it would go out. Scary and aggressive behavior like that from a 6-foot man with authority is enough to make you not want to retaliate, even when he's hurling insults at you or making you feel unsafe. There are many more memories of instances like this. When the teacher found out I was bisexual, he took advantage of me by using me as an opportunity to sexualize me and women. Once he invited me into his office to watch a YouTube video of a woman with a purple bodysuit dancing with an instrument, and he proceeded to discuss how sexually attractive her body was with me. I agreed in hopes to bond, later on realizing how gross it made me feel. Once during a lesson, I didn't have a proper trumpet mouthpiece. Once he invited me into his office to Once during a lesson, I didn't have a proper trumpet mouthpiece. He hands me his mouthpiece and said, "Here, try not to get salsa on it." I was conflicted on how to react and feel. I performed a show with shadow drum and bugle corps in 2017. When returning to band camp later, the teacher pulled me aside and congratulated me. I said thank you. He then asked me, "Hey, are any of those color guard girls over 18? I replied, "No, why?" He chuckled, grinned, and said, "I was just talking with blank, with so-and-so at the show." He was, those unitards don't really have much to the imagination. He was referring to the high school girls performing spandex.
I hate to cut you off.
Okay.
Past 3.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mao Lee.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to be reading my notes so I can stay on track. And I guess I didn't realize that I had 3 minutes, so I think I was kind of planning on 6 minutes, so I will kind of get to the point. I thank you for your time. I do want to talk about the impact of harassment and bullying, but I should say my name, Mao Lee, 224370 Country Lane, Wausau, Wisconsin. According to Cambridge Dictionary, harassment is defined as a form of illegal behavior towards a person that causes mental or emotional suffering. Per the U.S. Department of the Interior, equal opportunity, and workplace conduct. Harassment can be in the form of remarks, requests, or jokes. Bullying is the behavior of a person who hurts or frightens someone smaller or less powerful. How does bullying and harassment impact people? The effects of bullying and harassment have serious and lasting negative impacts on our mental health and overall well-being. It can cause feelings of rejection, exclusion, isolation, self-esteem, and some people can develop depression and anxiety as a result. And in some cases, it can even develop into an acute stress disorder. In addition, it can decrease a student's academic performance, and they're likely to skip school or drop out. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, bullying is considered as an adverse child experience, or ACE. ACEs are potentially traumatic events that can have negative and lasting effects on a person's development, the way the person interacts with other people, and how they perform in school. Bullying and harassment have a long and lasting damage to all parties, including the witnesses. Youth who report witnessing bullying had greater feeling of helplessness and have a less sense of connectedness to school. They're likely to experience mental health problems and skip school. I think all of us in this room here can agree that whether you are young or old, we all have life stressors. People like me who are older have the experience to deal with hardship and unexpected negativities in life. However, young people, as our students in our school, are still learning. In addition, life event is definitely more difficult for students who still are struggling with their identity. Just the last comments as I'm watching the clock here. Sometimes it's not about what we teach academically. It is about how we make our students feel through our actions, through our words. And I think we as professionals have the legal and moral obligations to do no harm. And parents send their kids to school to be educated, not to be humiliated. Thank you.
Thank you. Jane Elizabeth Lohr.
Shang Elizabeth Lohr. I drove here from Eau Claire, Wisconsin, 6210 Aspen Ridge Drive. I'm the first child born in my Hmong refugee family here in America, here specifically in Wausau, Wisconsin. I'm here today as a former East High student, a Hmong woman, and an activist behind my platform that elevates marginalized communities in arts and activism. When I decided to transfer to East High School in the 10th grade, I was starting a brand new chapter in my life. Anyone who knows me knows how much Wausau East High School means to me. It's where I finally felt comfortable in my own skin as a Hmong girl, where I spoke my native language with other peers for the first time and learned about my culture through a class. I've never been more proud of my identity until the moment that I became a Wausau East lumberjack. That's how much this school means to me. During my time there, a new school counselor started, and she was Hmong just like me, Mrs. Vong Pakati. I confided in her with lots of issues, lots of mental health stuff that I was going through, and she saw me for who I was. So ironically, I hate that I'm sitting here 18 years later, full circle, helping her and her family. When I found out about the racism and the discrimination, it broke my heart. A child should never have to go through something as painful as this. He's been robbed of his love for the music and the arts, his youth, his education, and his high school experience. And that's unacceptable to me. And the same place that shaped me into who I am today has become the very same place that another child is affiliating forever now with pain and trauma. Our queer BIPOC youth deserve better. Every child deserves the best. Especially from teachers who are there to protect, guide, and inspire, not humiliate, harm, and dehumanize. So with that, you've been provided a copy of our demands, which has been publicized and now viral and on national news. So these demands are, number one, we demand a retraction of the superintendent's determination. Number two, we ask for the termination of this teacher's employment. Number three, the family and the larger community deserves a public apology. Number four, we are asking for a task force that will be committed to creating equitable, diverse, and inclusive policies to reinforce your very own statement against discrimination of protected classes. Number five, mental health counseling services and safe spaces for students who may have been impacted by this situation. Number six, culturally competent education and training for all staff from an approved and qualified outside consultant of our choosing. Number seven, the establishment of EDI position that will address any future incidences, especially in cases that would require thorough, unbiased, and fair investigation involving those from protected classes. The endorsement of Wisconsin Legislation Senate Bill 240 directing school boards to provide instruction on Hmong and American studies. So until these demands are agreed and enacted upon, we will not stop pursuing justice. We will not stop pursuing our right to ensure that every child is safe. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anthony Yang. Anthony here? There he is.
Good evening, board. My name is Anthony Yang, 1920 Beaver Road, Mosinee. I come to you as a protective older brother, a concerned son, and a former student of Wausau East. My brother is a victim of discrimination caused by a teacher that he used to look up to. My parents are also victims due to this discrimination. My mother has devoted over 15 years of her life to this school, to Wausau East, and it pains us that our voices are being ignored. My father feels helpless because he couldn't protect his own son from another grown man's hate. Discrimination is not a democracy. Just because the majority votes that what he said is non-discriminatory doesn't mean that it didn't hurt, doesn't mean that it should be ignored. As a former principal once said of Wausau East, don't be a bucket poker, be a bucket filler. Thank you.
Ollie Barton.
Hello, my name is Ollie Barton. I'm a senior at East High School, 3724 Riverview Drive. The teacher charged at me and yelled at me last year for holding hands with my boyfriend in the hallway. He terrified me, similar to how the student felt and feels. The student has always advocated for others. He marched with me during the Black Lives Matter protests, and he listened to me cry. He is a lovely person and would never lie about this or any of his experiences. Telling people of color that hate speech and discrimination are okay when used as jokes is so invalidating and disrespectful. What about hate speech? Something that's used to tell us we're inferior to you is funny. We see how much you care for our mental health and belonging, which is very little, or you probably just don't. Many people outside of our school defending the teacher are white. To be white and tell a person of color what is and isn't hurtful to their culture is in itself racist. One cry to be listened to is all of our cries. Do better. Thank you.
Mao Lee.
Hello, my name is Maya Lee. I am a senior at Wausau East High School. I live on 619 Winton Street. I'm speaking on this incident with a realization that I may lose the respect that I have kindled with my peers and the staff of Wausau East High School. What I say is only from my experience and from the other intellectual minds that have allowed us to come to a middle ground. I say this from what I've heard from other people. They say that this specific issue may not be a cold stone black and white issue, but a subject matter in a continuum of gray. I cannot prove that these accusations happen, but neither can I prove that they have not. All we can do is spread word by mouth and express our experiences as my peers have. With the spike in Asian hate crimes, the Hmong community has taken an initiative to protect those who are victims of racism. From my experience, although I have experienced that the teacher does try to be open to different cultures, I now regret that he may be shunned by those who know his face and name in the Hmong community. The band kids have love for this teacher, and I'm glad that they have a staff member to connect to. Unfortunately, this was not the case for one of my peers, but his feelings are his own and should be validated. I've also heard excuses from other people that punishment is not acceptable towards such actions, as multiple teachers at our school have done worse. This is proof that racism is very much alive at our schools. Even my friends at Wausau West High School have expressed the same thing. I want us all to see that the Wausau School District has not taken initiative to protect minorities, whether they are people of color, disabled people, or people who are a part of the LGBTQ community. They have stated that this is a learning opportunity, but we have seen that such learning opportunities are just passive ways to give false hope to people who have experienced discrimination. There are too many motivated incidents at school for the short time that I have. Many students who I know of have reported to administration about harassment of homophobia or racism and have, in the end, received no later response. The school system does not have the proper procedure to fight against these dehumanizing behaviors that other students have experienced. These students are brothers, they are sisters, they are human, and they should be seen and heard. So what can we do? The people that I've talked to have said that, one, this specific issue may be a subject matter in a continuum of gray, but two, all incidents like these regarding teachers or students are a fault in the school system. We blame the system in the higher ups in our education system who time and time again deny the action to help minorities who are of different race, who suffer from disabilities, or who are LGBTQ. 3, create a procedure and encourage teachers and staff to step up against discriminatory actions. Set clear punishment for both teachers and students who emit these discriminatory signs. These words are from the people that I've talked to. We want to take this opportunity to look at the bigger picture and at the root of it all. We can do better. You can do better. We deserve better. See us, hear us. Thank you.
Next speaker is Tisha Zhang.
Hi, my name is Chia, 705 Jefferson Street. I'm going to be speaking upon the racism happening at Wausau East High School, the school that I have to go to every day. Every day when I step foot into that school, I feel like I don't belong there, and I isolate myself. Discrimination. What does that mean? The treatment of different categories of people, especially on the grounds of ethnicity, age, sex, or disability. Using Asian slurs is a form of discrimination. It's racism. But others don't see it that way. Why? Because they're not like us. They don't know what it's like to be Asian American, and they will never know. Others say it's okay to use slurs towards people of color because it's meant to be a joke. Racism is a joke to them. But vaping in school bathrooms, getting high, cheating on tests, getting into physical fights is a much bigger problem rather than racism. How could you have the audacity to face anyone or that school after everything that happened and act like everything is okay? You, being a teacher, you're supposed to educate students to be better, but you need to be educated. You will never know what those words can do to us because you don't go through what we do, because you have the privilege to do what you want to do, but we can't because we're people of color. We're not seen like you. We can't speak up like you, but that's going to change now. You will not be able to silence us, and we will not stay silent. You're not born racist, you learn being racist. just let that sink in. Thank you.
Next speaker, Major Mua.
Good evening. My name is Major Mua. I reside at 610 Leon Street, Rothschild, Wisconsin. Thank you, board members, for this opportunity to speak to you all tonight. I want to first begin by thanking the family and the student for their courageousness, their bravery. I know that it probably wasn't an easy task for them to come forward and seek justice and to ensure that the individual who has victimized the student is held accountable. I myself, as a parent, I have had to advocate for my little children, still they're school aged, but I have not had to advocate to the level that these parents are doing, so I applaud them for their bravery. I want to first begin that with, I am an alumna of the Wausau School District. I graduated from Wausau West High School. I then went on to graduate from UW-Madison with my bachelor's and master's degree. I certainly did not want to move back. However, my family and my husband's family are here. And the reason why I was reluctant to move back was because of my experience in high school with an assistant principal who discriminately asked me what I was doing in the counseling office while I was waiting to see my counselor. I did address that with my counselor, and she talked with the assistant principal. The response was that I was treated unfairly because of gang activities that were going on in the community. And I myself among, I was a great student. I received a full ride scholarship to UW-Madison. So when I heard about the story, which I don't have any affiliation with the family, I don't know who they are, but when I heard about the experience of the student, it broke my heart. It took me back to my own experience, and it is very traumatic. I can still remember very vividly the experiences that I had to endure. And even to this day, when I walk into that school, that's the one memory that I have. And I hope that as board members, you do your due diligence, that you hold your staff responsible. I did have some chance to look through the 2022 and 2023 employee manual, as well as the board policy manual. And it does state that you have a responsibility and that you are to oversee your staff, particularly in situations like this. So my hope for you is to do your due diligence, exercise your position of authority, your position of influence, and pave the way for the rest of us and make sure that these students like this individual, does want to come back to Wausau after getting their higher ed and want to give back to this community and grow our community. Thank you.
Next speaker, Yua Yang.
Hello, my name is Dr. Zhou Yang, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read a letter that I had actually written on my birthday. It was very sad because it was one of the first things that I did when I woke up, went on Facebook, and the first things I saw. I am a 20-year Wausau East alumni, class of 2003, junior class president. I wake up this morning on my 38th birthday to witness that in the last 20 years, racism, discrimination, harassment toward minorities is still here at Wausau East. Despite many wonderful teachers, principals, and support system at Wausau East, I too have been a victim to racial slurs, racial discrimination, and harassment. I am very disgusted at the Wausau School District administrators for deeming and supporting this incident regarding this teacher as humor that is racist and sexist in nature according to the students. Yet, this teacher's behavior is not engaging in harassing or discriminatory behavior. Discrimination is defined as the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people, especially on the grounds of ethnicity, age, sex, or disability. Harassment is defined as unwelcome conduct that is based on the race, color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation, gender, identity or pregnancy, national origin, older age, disability, or genetic information. The use of dirty monkey, chink, faggot, ching chong towards students is disgusting, especially from a professional in the school. Anyone who accepts these behaviors as non-harassment or non-discriminatory is as guilty as the one who displayed the actions. We must move forward in creating a safe environment for the students to grow and to learn. According to the quote on the Wausau School District letterhead, it is the mission of the Wausau School District to advance student learning, achievement, and success. If you're unwilling to help create this environment, I suggest a deep self-evaluation on what truly is the role of our administrators. Thank you.
Next speaker, Kaylee McCauley.
Good evening to the board. Thank you for this opportunity to address you tonight. My name is Kaylee McCauley, 5177 North 28th Ave, Apartment 3. I'm here today because I believe all students should be treated with dignity and respect, and I particularly understand the consequences for students when that doesn't happen. Working as a mental health professional within this community, I also am here to show solidarity within the Hmong community. As you know, a student had the courage to speak up about the harmful, discriminatory comments they experienced. But despite these comments being corroborated, it was determined that the Wausau School District deemed the remarks not to be considered harassment. This is disappointing and also unacceptable. No student should have to experience something like this, especially not by a teacher, somebody who is supposed to be a trusted and safe adult. It's important to recognize that whether the comments made by the teacher were intended to be hurtful or not, the impact on the student's family, and the community at large has been one of harm. Members of marginalized communities should never be expected to endure offensive racial remarks. And I think that the lack of accountability and passive response to this incident undermines the harm that has been caused. I think it sets a precedent that concerns like this will not be taken seriously going forward. I am a proud graduate of the Wausau School District, and I consider myself incredibly fortunate to have known some phenomenal, wonderful, supportive teachers in this district. And it's because of this that I know it's entirely reasonable and possible to hold our district and its teachers to a higher standard. I know that accountability can elicit negative feelings like defensiveness and resentment, but opportunities for accountability truly are acts of care. It is an acknowledgement of people's humanity and capacity to transform behaviors. And I consider the display of support here tonight an act of care. And I think that you should all be deeply, deeply humbled by the Hmong community's willingness and courage to speak on this matter, because it has not been easy for them, and I see that. And so I ask that this be considered when evaluating if the district's determination for this incident was truly appropriate, because I feel like after listening to people's accounts tonight, it was not appropriate whatsoever. And so I thank you for your time, and I appreciate you listening to myself and the others who have shared tonight. Thank you.
Next speaker, Sawyer Ekman.
My name is Sawyer Ashman. I reside at 315 Western Avenue here in Wausau. I would like to first address to the board that harassment by teachers has always been a thing. When I was in second grade, I was told by my second grade teacher that I would never amount to anything and that I was an idiot because I could not read. That was a year before I was diagnosed with dyslexia. In sixth grade, my teacher, in one of my reading classes, covered out the page because I was daydreaming out the window and got into my face and yelled at me in front of the whole class. And that was a year before I was diagnosed with ADHD. When I was outed by my girlfriend at the time, who was also in band at Wausau East, the environment was very inclusive. I feel bad for the student because I know where that comes from. But this does just seem very uncharacteristic from what I remember. So what I am asking the board to do is to release those investigation into the band director's misconduct. This is now public information just due to the investigation being completed. So I do request that it is released. If not, I do request a written reason as to why my request is being rejected. Thank you.
Bailey Boots.
Bailey Boots, 608 and a half South 4th Ave. I appreciate you all for listening to me tonight. Kind of following up Sawyer's. I have a speech planned, and I feel like I just need to talk instead of following my speech. Robert, or the person in question tonight, I won't use names. All I can say about him is that I am shocked seeing the accusations against him, to be honest. I know that personally him, one story comes to mind of him being as supportive as he always was, as I remember him. My sister passed away in 2015. I was a freshman, she was a senior, and I remember all of her friends, and many of them were in band. The only person that all of her friends could go to were the person in question. I remember them telling me I couldn't go to therapists, I couldn't go to any of my other teachers. I went to him, and they spent the entire day in the band room because that was the only place that they felt truly appreciated, they felt truly safe. And just the amount of students that I had helped that were also in band that came out as, you know, they were in a part of the LGBTQ community, disabled people, people of color, the amount of people that I knew that he supported. I am just so shocked hearing what has happened. And I truly appreciate how much he had supported all of us, especially in that difficult time, because he was the only person that we could all go to. So I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe at this time, that is the end of the public comments, and I greatly appreciate everyone for being here, and I thank you for giving us your points of view. Thank you very much. I think if we could take, maybe, just keep on going. Yeah, I think we can. chance to get back in here. All right. Agenda item number 6, approve consent agenda. Appointments, additional staff, replacement staff, contract increases, separations, resignations, contract decreases, terminations, leaves of absence, retirements, minutes from the regular session of April 10th, 2023, payment of bills, budget status, and investment report. Donations to the district are the following: Sharon and Richard Rayburn, Mary Ann Dykes, Sarah Eberlein, Forest Park Neighborhood, Stacy and John Morash, Wausau East Theater Arts Group, Gale, and Gumdrop. I'm seeking a motion to approve the consent agenda. Any questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 7, old recurring business. Education Operations Committee meeting, referendum construction update. As the referendum-funded facility improvements continue to develop, construction and budget updates will be routinely presented. At this time, do we have anything else to add? Nothing. Okay. Legal expense summary for third quarter. At the April Education Operations Committee meeting, Chief Finance and Business Services Officer Bob Tess presented a summary report presenting all legal counsel expenses incurred during the third quarter of 2022-2023. The report is broken down by law firm, by type of legal advice sought. This is a written report that requires no action. Any comments or any follow-ups? No? Okay. Agenda item number 8, new businesses, new business. Jason Foster, Jennifer Rauscher, and Kurt Vandenhoevel will recommend approving WIA co-op agreements for boys lacrosse and girls lacrosse beginning with the 2023-2024 season.
Good evening. As you can see, Cassie has it up there on the screen. We're faced with a situation, and we can kind of go slide by slide. We're basically faced with a situation where the WIA has approved lacrosse to become a WIA sport beginning next school year. Both boys and girls lacrosse participate in the spring season. So in the 23-24 year, basically, if we want to, and it's on the kind of, we'll go through the slides, Cassie, up, and then we'll kind of just talk about it. So the co-op request is for us to have WIAA-sponsored boys and girls lacrosse. What we currently have is club boys and girls lacrosse. The club team on the boys' side is made up of Wausau East and Wausau West. So we currently have a club co-op agreement. And then on the girls' side, Kurt, you can speak to that a little bit.
On the girls' side, we have co-opt with Wausau East, Wausau West, and DC Everest, and currently Mosinee right now.
And as a club sport, those have been, we have the agreements, but they've probably, I would say, slightly less formalized as not official WIAA sports. So we're kind of faced with a situation right now where if we don't agree to make them WIAA sports, we will kind of have limited opportunity for participation moving forward. I guess you can go to the next one. So obviously it goes along with our mission statement: advance student learning, achievement, and success, and to create opportunities, limit barriers. If we do not go ahead with this co-op agreement, we will there's another slide that kind of talks about the pros and the cons moving forward, but ultimately we would really lose opportunities to play other teams, as we would no longer be allowed to play teams that do become WIAA teams if we're providing any support to our current teams. So basically the option will kind of comes down to we make them a WIAA sport and continue to support them, but probably on a little larger level, as you'll see. Or if we don't make it a WIAA sport, if we want them to be able to compete outside of, like, just with the club, we'd have to essentially not support them at all. If we give them any sort of financial support, then they have to be a WIAA team. Otherwise, they would not be eligible to play as a club team to play the other WIAA teams.
And then as you can see, as our career ready indicators for redefining ready is that we're trying to create more opportunities because we know that students that are participating in multiple activities after school are more likely to pursue a higher education. And so to have this opportunity in Central Wisconsin for kids, I think is phenomenal because it is a sport that's growing and it is going to continue to grow, and it could potentially be a nice staple for our school district as being able to offer it in Central Wisconsin, where a lot of the schools around aren't able to do that.
So basically, kind of just a quick review of the co-op approval process. Things that we need to consider is what is the minimum number of participants in order for the activity to exist. Lacrosse is similar to soccer and football in that they need 11 players on the field to go. We're currently on the boys' side. With the co-op between East and West, we're in the mid to upper 20s, and our number kind of fluctuates a little bit. Our numbers are slightly down this year on the boys' side. We're usually kind of in that upper 20s to 30.
And from the girls' side, we have a real healthy number of 30, mostly consisting of East and West students, and then there's a couple sprinkled in with DC Everest and Mosinee.
All right, so does the Wausau School District have enough participants to run the activity without a cooperative agreement? At this time, on the boys' side, we would not have enough at East or West to successfully field a team that we felt we could go week in and week out. I would say it's a little bit similar to where we're at with Wausau East girls soccer right now, where we would really be, if you had any ineligibilities or any injuries, that sort of thing, you would definitely be in jeopardy of not being able to field a standalone team.
And I think from the girls' side, without the co-op, it doesn't have that opportunity to play at multiple levels and then be able to compete at the skill development level for, example, a JV team. So without that co-op, it would lead into having kids that aren't necessarily skilled being in playing that varsity level right away and jumping into it and not having that opportunity to develop throughout. So it does, with the co-op, allow those opportunities for kids to be playing at the developmental level that they're at.
And will the participating schools eventually be able to sustain their own activity? Through much discussion on the topic, we've kind of looked at this as kind of a unique situation. If you tie it into restructuring a little bit, is that this is something that currently exists at our school and has never existed outside of the co-op. They're even called something different. They're the Wausau Wolf Pack. That's kind of the youth organization's name. And we kind of look at it as maybe a model of some things that we would have moving forward with the Wausau East and Wausau West students playing together. If we continue down our path of restructuring, then that last point becomes moot on the boys' side, as though because we would be one team, we would no longer be a co-op beginning in the fall of the 25-26 school year.
You can go to the next slide. From the girls' side, some nice things that are going on is there is continuing growing success. And one of the things that I can attest to being an event manager with this is the opportunity that these girls do and the sportsmanship that comes with it. Not only are they co-oping, but they're bringing a community together. And then on top of that, I've just recently been to a senior night where they introduce all of their seniors, but then they also recognize the seniors of the opposing team that they're playing at and they actually deliver. So there's some really cool things that this group has done just from coming together as a community and then developing their identity as to how youth organized sports should be and purpose-based. So those are some cool things that are happening when we combine East, West, DC Everest, and that's why we're looking to do that for the WIAA season beginning next year.
On the boys' side, Cass, if you go to the next one, thank you very much. On the boys' side, it's very similar, except that it is just the Wausau East, Wausau West. Last week, Monday, when they played, it was their youth night, and there was a good number out there. They were able to we were playing Everest on that same night, so the Everest youth kind of played the Wausau Wolfpack youth at halftime, and both groups have enough to sustain the program moving forward. It is a fairly new sport. It's Lacrosse Association, it's a national association, but then within the club within the state of Wisconsin has really kind of taken its time with the WIA and done their due diligence on this. This is something that's kind of been talked about for the last 3, 4, 5 years, is when is this going to become a WIA sport? And the Lacrosse Club Association has really put in place things. One of the things, if we want to talk about girls hockey, teams keep combining and the co-ops kind of keep getting bigger, and as a result, the numbers are dwindling. Lacrosse has really done their due diligence and have place things in order right from the very beginning to effort to break up these co-ops. As soon as you have enough people to sustain your own teams, to kind of break it up, because they're really motivated to continue that sport to grow. So I think that we're kind of on the right step with that moving forward, and I think Wausau's in a good position to kind of make this commitment and this change. Cassie?
There are some things that are associated with it. For example, to help out with the cost, we are looking for transportation costs, officials costs, coaching, and then fees, which roughly comes about with the east and west side. For the boys is $20,000. For the girls, it would be the same. However, we are co-oping with DC Everest, so we'd be splitting that cost evenly amongst the two school districts.
Just to kind of know how that breaks out a little bit. So currently, as we pay our lacrosse coaches right now, there are 3 paid coaches. The breakdown of that pay is, so like all of our coaches are paid on a percentage of the base. Right now, the head lacrosse coach gets paid 8%, and then the first assistant gets paid 5%, the second gets paid 4%. So that's the coaching part of that is rough. So 17%, so roughly $7,500. So of that $20,000, $7,500 of it would be to pay for the coaches, and then the other 12 really is that transportation, officials, and entry fees, which is what we're similar to what we do with our other athletic WIA sanctioned athletic club or teams right now.
And with the transportation side of it, it will be a little bit higher just based on the travel that's associated with those programs.
One other question might be, in case you can go to the next slide as we talk about this. When we talk about what if, and this is true of both the boys and the girls, if we co-op, we would have WIA membership support. Our teams would be qualified to participate in the end of season playoffs and state tournament, give us the opportunity to host as well. We have the school facilities available to do it. Increased scheduling and travel opportunities. That's one of the drawbacks I would say to lacrosse right now is I think it's growing in this part of the state, but right now it's most highly represented kind of along the eastern half of the state and then down in that Madison area with a little bit over in the Hudson area as well, being that close to Minnesota. Hudson's really the one big enough to have it over there. A lot of the smaller schools do not at this point. From a conference standpoint, on the boys' side, Wausau and DC Everest would be the only 2 schools who would have a WIA-sponsored team right now. From a club standpoint, Wisconsin Rapids, Spash, and Pacelli currently have a team on the club side, and they have not officially committed at this point to having a WIA team. So at this point, it's not really, conference isn't really relevant because there will only be 2 schools in our conference at this point that have it.
And then I would say with the facilities, when we say school facilities available, with the referendum money of creating a field at Wausau East that also makes it a central location for multiple teams to come to central Wisconsin for tournament play. So that would be one of those opportunities that we could reach out with WIA to be hosting tournament sites as well with the upgrades that we're putting here at Wausau.
And then just kind of bringing it around full circle, what if we stayed an independent club team? Well, we would not have a budgetary impact on us because if they wanted to stay a club team and keep playing, we could not support them in that if they want to be able, because the WIA says a club team can play against WIA teams as long as they're not sanctioned or affiliated or paid for anyway by any school district. They'd not be eligible for WIA tournament. There would be increased scheduling and travel challenges on their behalf because the teams they play would be fewer and far between. And then obviously I think without that support, they would struggle with some sustainability issues long term. And so the last slide just kind of speaks to what the motion would be if this is something that we're interested in tonight. So if you have any questions, hopefully we can answer them for you.
Let's ask the questions before we put a motion on the table.
Just a couple. So what happens to the club team before? So I'm just imagining like the Wolf Pack then becomes almost like the Wausau Area Little League for the
youth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, for the
Yep.
youth. And then when a student gets into high school, then they're eligible for the JV.
Exactly.
And okay, so that's
And
good.
I would say, we haven't even touched on this, so this is just kind of pie in the sky kind of stuff. But if you talked restructuring and we talked about adding sports to the middle school, junior high level, I would say that would be something we would look at down the road, is having a middle school lacrosse team, kind of like we do football, basketball.
The only other question I had is, Kurt, you mentioned Mosinee as part of the girls' team today, but they're not in this co-op, or at least in this proposed co-op.
They said with the two kids that they didn't know at this time that they would be willing to fund. So when you have that conversation, could that be an attraction for kids to come into our district?
Sure. Okay. So it's their decision. It wasn't anything that we put in place to.
No, it was just reaching out to say, would you be willing to fund the co-op if we presented you on there? And they said at this time that they're not willing to do that.
Okay. All right. I think it's a great opportunity. Makes sense.
So I would venture to say that on the western side of the state, it will grow, because if Hudson's over there and already supporting and in the WIAA, they have to be in the WIAA in order to play the Minnesota State High School League teams over there, because they've already had lacrosse. And so the growth factor is there on the west side. It's not just over on the east side and south side with Madison and Milwaukee area. So I'm just kind of putting that out there. This is a great opportunity. It's a great sport. I've seen it come from club in the past to athletics to the varsity level, and very well played. Any other questions?
And I would just say, in speaking with the Mosinee pad too as well, that they still have till that June 1st, so we can still add them up until that June 1st deadline. So that was kind of the communication that I said, that if you ever go back, we have that time if you're interested in joining on that co-op.
Quick question on that.
Closing a little bit.
That would, yeah.
Okay.
June 1st is the deadline of
getting it to the WIA.
And this board would have to approve that change then by June 1, agree, or correct?
If
Mosinee wanted to join?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And from a board impact standpoint, as I'm sure you know, if they added, that would just reduce our district's budgetary commitment to it. So it would be I would think, a pretty straightforward decision.
Okay, with that, then I'm going to put a motion on the table to begin with. We have two motions. I'm seeking a motion to approve girls lacrosse WIAA co-op East, West, and DC Everest for 2 years.
So moved.
Second. Any questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Put the second motion out. I'm seeking a motion to approve boys lacrosse WIAA co-op East and West for 2 years.
So moved.
Second.
I presume no questions. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, the following item on the agenda, concept design at Horace Mann. The board will review the preliminary concept design for Horace Mann capital improvements that include renovations and additional square footage for Montessori. Administration seeks approval to continue with these designs with Montessori budget allocations and design determined at a future date.
Thank you. I'm here again with Sharon Gould from Nexus, design team leader, and Rob Phelps, principal at Horace Mann. And what we'd like to talk to you about is the design at Horace Mann and how that's coming along right now, and how we're a little bit off cycle from what we normally are. Normally, we come to you and we have a 50% design, and we don't necessarily ask you to take action, but we come again at 95%. We bring a budget and we do ask you to take action for us to put those designs out to bid. This one is a little bit unusual, and we just want to make sure we have assurance from the board that we're moving forward with designing exactly what you want us to design. And specifically, we're going to take the Horace Mann Montessori component, and we're going to break it off, and we're not designing it, and the Horace Mann non-Montessori component, and we're moving forward with that design. So we want to review the concept without the Montessori addition, talk about the timeline of what the design looked like during the referendum, what the design is looking like today, what it's bound to look like going forward. We do want to do that with consideration for the board action that was taken on February 13th. The board action on February 13th said a lot about restructuring, and maybe it was silent on a few things about what we're going to do with Montessori and repurposing the dollar amount that is right now allocated for Montessori. That's why we're here in front of you. We want to make sure that we don't waste time, energy, and all the things that go into a wrong design before we do it. And then in the end, we want approval from you to continue with the design that we're already starting. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Sharon, and she's going to talk about the designs more specifically.
So good evening, everybody. So I just, again, to follow the standard protocol, we do have the referendum concepts that was on the district website that was presented to the voters for referendum. If you look at the concept, I'm not going to talk about most of the bullet points tonight, but if you look at this lower left-hand corner, you can see a blue and a green square. That represents the Montessori renovations and additions to the referendum concept. So next slide. Oh, I guess I have it. So with that, about 6 weeks ago, we started the design phase. We've had 3 main design meetings with the district leadership team and the building design committee. And we've had 3 user group meetings, which involved the principal, maintenance, teachers, focusing on the major areas of design that we're looking at: the library, athletics, and the PE areas, the front office, and art. And so it did come to our attention that we're at a crossroads now on how we want to deal with the Montessori addition moving forward. So with that, we have 2 concepts that we have shown on the board. We have the original referendum concept. Again, just pointing out in the lower left-hand corner, we have the 7 classrooms of Montessori renovation in their support spaces, and then we have 3 classrooms in the new addition with the new front office for the Montessori wing. The design on the right does not include that Montessori addition. We just want to be really clear on where the boundaries are, and what we're looking for tonight is to proceed with the design as shown without the Montessori addition in the lower left-hand corner. We don't have the second floor shown because there's not a lot of impact on the upper floor. So with that, part of our conversations, and the reason why we're here today too, is we wanted to discuss the impact of changing the school to a 5 to 7 grade building. And so it did come up through our conversations that it's important to provide through the renovations to equal size, equal educational opportunity classrooms as we're remodeling that secure front entrance. And so I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Phelps to discuss a little bit just the educational value of having the 2 art rooms.
Yeah, and I'll add to that equal storage as we look at our facilities. So as our secure entrance conversations continued, you can see from the left to the right how that changed a little bit. Domino effect, some planning without Montessori there went into this as well. But you can see our amount of space in the updated art room concept is a little smaller in the secure entrance. We didn't need as many office space there. When we looked at our 2 art rooms and planning for a 5 through 7, there are still some unknowns in there, but what we knew going into it was that we would need more equal spaces. 104 compared to 103 is a much smaller room. We know that we're getting our 5th graders. We know that we're getting our 6th graders. We have our 6th graders. Those 2 grades, it's mandatory to have art. In our current structure, it's only mandatory to have art as 6th grade. So right now we have a building of 3 art rooms. We're going down to 2 art rooms. We currently have a 6, 7, 8 structure where every 6th grader has art. 7th and 8th grade, it's elective. So not all 7th and 8th graders have art. We're going to a structure 5, 6, 7, every 5th grader is going to have art, every 6th grader is going to have art. We know that, state statute. 7th grade still undetermined. So there are some undetermined, but utilizing those 2 spaces is important. Also working with our user group for art, storage space is huge, especially as we're looking at 5th graders, 6th graders. They have a lot of stuff, right? A lot of art projects. So utilizing that space and adequate storage is very important.
On this slide, you just see the breakup. It's the same number, 12,119,000 is the same number that we've been carrying for Horace Mann, the building, all along. It might not be important how the split looks tonight, but in the future it will be more and more important because that 5.312 million could be reallocated for something else. So right now we're already designing, but we would love to hear from you to continue designing the 6.807 million portion of the Horace Mann building. This is a familiar slide. You're used to seeing it, so I'm telling you the same thing from the previous slide in a little bit more familiar setting. The number on the lower right didn't change, $416,000 under budget right now, and it just takes that Horace Mann single component and splits it in two. The Horace Mann with Montessori and the Horace Mann without Montessori. And we would, obviously we'll answer any questions as well, but we would like to get direction from you to continue designing the Horace Mann, not Montessori portion, if that makes sense. And they're the three components.
Any questions?
Questions, board members?
Yeah, I've got a few. So what exactly, if Montessori is removed, what exactly is changing at Horace Mann? Is it the two art rooms in this blue section?
So what we have here is we're looking at remodeling the library space. So upstairs would turn into the new library and the lower level would be a community room. So we're looking at a new secure front entrance sequence to remodel the front office. We're adding a fitness, the green on the lower right-hand corner on both spaces, we're just changing it around to match the program a little bit better. So we're doing a fitness room addition and we're doing some locker room remodeling, some unisex toilet room addition, and other building maintenance throughout. We're replacing some of the partition walls. We're doing cafeteria furniture replacement, some mechanical work, a lot of site work. We're adding an ADA path to the fields. We're replacing some of the asphalt to upgrade it, new maintenance, and there is a playground section that's included in that project as well.
It just seems like we're not doing a heck of a lot to the building for $6.8 million. Something just seems out of balance. What was the original, with Montessori included, was 12 point something, and how much was the Montessori component?
The numbers.
It was 5.3 for that lower left-hand corner?
Yes, and those were the original numbers shared during the referendum and after, and that was the building improvement measure, the BIM. For the Montessori was always 5.3 million and everything else was 6.807.
Okay.
Because that was their main entrance then, too, if that, they would to stay at Horace Mann, correct? And so that had to be a secure area.
Yeah. So Bob, you said something else towards the end about that 5.3 million could be reallocated for a different project. But this board already talked. There's nothing reallocated until, well, let me stop there. Where is Montessori going?
And how is the building being utilized even with the renovations? Because it's not moving with these renovations.
So where is Montessori going?
So we'll be bringing a proposal to the board for assignments of all the elementary schools. Currently, in our conversations with Mrs. Channel, we're planning on the Montessori being housed in the current Lincoln School. That's the most preferred site.
And has there been any design or budget put together for that renovation, assuming that's where it lands?
No. We've had some conversations about how extensive the renovation needs to be. Of course, that's, it hasn't been officially designed yet, but we'll need to have the conversation with the board about your interest in reassigning some of those funds to do that.
Well, I don't think, okay, I'll speak for myself. I have no interest in reassigning any funds that were already passed and aligned per the referendum. This 5.3 million is Montessori's money. If they're gonna move into Lincoln, that's their checkbook.
Well, I disagree with that. And the reason I disagree with that is because I don't disagree that Lincoln would be a preferred destination for Montessori, but if they move into a building that we can't sell for $2 million, that's a consideration. If they move into a building that we now have to keep on the books for future maintenance and future upgrades, and that's a consideration as well. So I think the board needs to know what the cost is, what they need at Lincoln or wherever the location is. And the question I was going to have tonight is, because the board's going to have to decide whether Montessori moves out of Horace Mann and to what school. Not only to what school, but even whether they move out of Horace Mann at all.
Correct.
And so if the decision is that it would be better to stay in Horace Mann for whatever reason, I don't think that's the way it's going to go, but just if it did, wouldn't we have a better bidding process if we did all of it at once than if we separated it out?
If it all went as one chunk, the Montessori addition at the same time as the rest of the building, that would be a better bidding climate.
So that I think that's part of what Pat was asking as well, is when are we going to find that out? Because, the board should make a decision on whether Montessori is moving out or not. And if they are, okay, then go forward with the plan as you have here. But if the decision is Montessori stays in Horace Mann, then you design all of it and bid it all at once.
So your point on we wouldn't be selling another school would be that is another financial consideration that we have to consider in terms of where we're assigning Horace Mann. Where we would be putting Montessori.
Right, and I don't
Because the assumption right now, I think, at least mine was, is that it was already a done deal that they were moving somewhere else. But if we're saying that's not the case, I agree with you 100%. If that's still up for debate, that's fine.
Well, it hasn't been decided yet, so.
Been discussed.
Until it's, that's where I think it's going to go, but I wouldn't be willing to say that's definitely where it's going to go until I actually find out what is the cost.
Right.
Because if it's as you say, if it's, well, they need $5.3 million and a school that we now have to keep on the books, that my opinion on, and my vote's probably going to be different than if they only need $312,000 and not $5 million. So I think we need to know those things before we can decide what we're going to do with Montessori. I know that Montessori would definitely prefer to be in a different location. And I think that brings some value to the district if that happens, because Montessori brings in students from outside of the district, which makes the school district money. I hate to talk about it in terms of money, but it does. And so that, I think it's going to end up in that spot, but if it doesn't, I think we're going to kick ourselves for not designing it all and bidding it all at once.
No, if I could clarify, so designing and bidding all at once, are you saying if Montessori were in another building?
Well, I'm saying
if they were staying at Horace Mann.
Yeah, if we design just the one part of Horace Mann and go forward and bid it, and then, a year from now or whenever, it could be one day after that, whatever, we decide, no, Montessori is actually going to stay in Horace Mann, I'm worried that we're going to wish that we would have done it all at once and made the decision so that it could be designed and bid all together.
Sure. So you're looking for the estimate of what it would cost to renovate Lincoln to receive Montessori?
Is that where Montessori will be going?
That's only one thing of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need that too.
One decision is going to be domino right into the next one.
Yeah, I don't want to rehash everything regarding the restructuring debate, but this is where the details and the long-term plan matter. Because making a decision today, I'm not at all comfortable saying yes to this, because we just heard you don't know where it's going to end up. And I also want to make sure that we do protect that money, and not that it's going to happen tonight, but that we do protect Montessori's allotment here, and that it somehow does not get lost in the shuffle and allocated here, and we come back in 3 months and somebody says, oh, sorry, there's no more money for Montessori.
Right, yeah, and I agree with that too, and so I didn't mean to suggest anything other than that. It's just, a large chunk of that money is to add capacity to Horace Mann. Mm-hmm. Well, if Montessori goes into a building that has more capacity than Montessori students number, then we're not going to spend money to add capacity to Horace Mann, even though in the referendum, technically there was money to add capacity to Horace Mann. So I'm just going to make up a number. Let's say 3 million of that was for the secure entrance and adding capacity. I don't know. Well, I'm not going to be comfortable with saying, oh, that's Montessori's money if they don't need the capacity, and if we already have a budget for Lincoln's secure entrance for $300,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So we need to know all that before we can decide.
Correct. And then what are the internal renovations that are needed?
Right.
What else is needed to make it successful?
Because a portion of that was internal renovations.
Right.
And so I would be much more receptive to saying, well, Montessori gets to still have all those internal renovations that they need to make the space what they need for Montessori, just like they were going to make Horace Mann what they needed for Montessori.
Okay. Good points. Other points? Because I'm hearing people wanting to say something on this side.
Oh, well, my question is really, the capacity Lance is talking about is really the addition of Montessori. That's the capacity we were talking about, right? Okay, so that, otherwise, can you just explain, because I'm not familiar with that building the same way I am with John Muir, of how each class group is like split up and how they don't interact with each other except for maybe gym and lunch like they do at John Muir? And any considerations of that, and is there any remodeling stuff that needs to be addressed to create separations maybe? Because those are some of the concerns that have been addressed by the community.
It's a very similar concept. We have teams. Our sixth grade is mostly on the first floor, kind of near the Montessori space. Some of our sixth grade has had to move upstairs to make room for Montessori on the other side of the first floor. But for the most part, they're together. Our seventh grade is on the second floor of one wing, and our eighth grade is on the second floor of the other wing.
Yeah, you guys addressed the questions that I was wondering about, because we needed to have a discussion about all these things together to make a final.
Yeah, I would feel more comfortable knowing what Montessori will need if they move to Lincoln before moving forward with Horace Mann or allocating any of their money. I'd like to make sure that they have what they need before we allocate any of their funds.
Lacking emotion or lacking action from you, we will have no choice but to discontinue the design process. We'll stop the design process. What we were trying to do tonight was to get the board to confirm that our plans for that building should not add on more square footage. And I'm only basing that on the action that you took on February 13th, because that's all I have to go by. So the board took action on February 13th, and we talked about the likelihood of needing an addition at Horace Mann. And I really couldn't come up with any kind of scenario that kept us there, but I'm glad we brought it, that's for sure, because we brought it to you and we were able to have this conversation tonight. It did suspend our design process for a little bit, and we'll come back on May 22nd, I think the date is, and maybe we'll get enough direction from you, even though it wouldn't be full board action on that night, but we'd get enough direction from you to maybe pick up that design process again. So above all else, I'm glad we had this conversation tonight.
And I just want to make sure it's clear, I'm not saying you shouldn't continue to look at the design of the Horace Mann part of the Horace Mann change. But I don't know enough about the designing and those expenses to know whether or not it makes sense to do the design part all at once as well. I was just saying I wouldn't be comfortable with it going out to bid on just that one little project and not trying to do the whole thing at once.
Understood.
Okay.
John, did you have any?
No, I agree with everything you said, Lance. I think we need to know, is Montessori going to move into Lincoln? If so, how much beyond what's already attributed to Lincoln may or may not be needed? And then we can make a determination of where they're going, what is needed, and then obviously a discussion happens after that. If they only need a certain amount of that $5 million or not, then where those funds could be, reallocated to support, the rest of the projects that are ongoing in the district. So I think we need to know that piece.
And as part of that plan, you will include the financial impacts of not selling the school, the investment needed annually for maintenance, all those other things in terms of I don't know if you want to call it a Montessori pro forma, but that would be helpful.
I agree. I think that's kind of a direction that you're getting. We need that. So,
I'll get that for you.
so with this, do you want this motion? Because
There's no motion anymore.
there's no motion.
You can vote it down if you'd like, but I don't think you need to
Well,
really.
let's not put a motion on the table. We don't need to vote it down, but you've got a direction on this. And I think that's what you wanted to begin with. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good discussion, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Agenda item 8C, various group wage salary increases. Due to the uncertainty of the state budgetary funding, the administration is recommending at this time that the board approve matrix step movement and degree recognition for the teacher group only. Once the state budget is determined and our funding is clear, we would then request the board to act on an increase of all employee groups. I turn it over to you, Ms. Gunther.
So my request tonight, I think, is fairly straightforward. A couple items down on the agenda, you'll be acting on the renewed contracts for teachers for 23-24. When we release those contracts, it is oftentimes very confusing for the teachers if we do not advance their step and or show the degrees that they have already turned in and been approved for in terms of movement. So what I'm asking for is the board to give us the approval to move ahead and reflect those step increases and step adjustments for additional education that have already been documented and approved in our system. We would hold of actually asking for a finalized salary approval. It is believed that we will likely see something from the state in June. That's generally about when we would expect to see that. And what I'd like to do is be able to come back to you once we have that state budget figured out so that we can ask you to act on all wage increases for staff. Obviously, at that point, the teacher portion of step movement and degree recognition will already be implemented, but they won't actually start receiving pay on that until September. So it's still in advance of when their pay would actually start. And we would anticipate then it'll be an adjustment for them for whatever is determined. And then similar to what we've done in the past is we've asked for wage increases for all of our other groups that align to that same overall percentage. They're just distributed differently for support staff. So I just wanted to go into a little bit more in depth on that because I think some people saw the agenda item and misinterpreted that we were giving raises to the teachers straightforward and not considering those for others. We're simply trying to recognize and have their contracts issued at the correct step placement based on what will be happening for next school year.
Okay. Any questions? None? I'm seeking a motion to move to approve the advancement of degree and matrix steps for teachers for the 2023-24 school year at this time.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I abstain.
Absolutely. One abstention, please.
Thank you.
That's right, we had talked about that. We're going to cross out agenda item 8D and move on. We don't have all the information to move on that one. 8E, agenda item, Education Operations Committee meeting, 2023-24 Budget Reconciliation Plan. At the April Education Operations Committee meeting, Bob Tess, Chief Finance and Business Services Officer, presented a budget reconciliation plan aligned with the district's shared key interest that will be applied in the development of the 2023-24 budget. Any additional items? If not, I'm seeking a motion to approve the 2023-24 budget reconciliation plan as presented.
Yeah. So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain. One abstention, please. Motion carries. Thank you very much. 2023-24 teacher contract approval.
I'm back. So So the list that you have in front of you is the teacher contracts for approval for 2023-24 school year. You can see there all of the regular contracts that would roll forward accordingly, and their FTEs that correspond are listed. So we're just asking for approval to be able to issue those prior to the statutory deadline, which is coming up at the end of the week.
Okay, I'm seeking a motion to approve the 2023-24 teacher contract list as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions?
Yeah, I've got one question. Given where we are in the beginning of this meeting, do we need to hold one contract out pending other happenings going on?
Statutorily, you cannot, because there was no preliminary notice of non-renewal provided from a timing standpoint. So even if you choose to take that off by statute, it'll automatically roll forward for next year.
So there's nothing the board can do right now to take that off and have any meaningful impact?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
One abstention. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Taking a look at the following item, Neola update estimate. Here, the committee reviewed the proposed updates to the attached policies at the April Education Operations Committee meeting. I'm seeking a motion to approve the changes to the attached policies as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions about those? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 8E4, Managed Print Service Vendor Selection. At the April Education Operations Committee meeting, Mr. Uding, Director of Technology and Media Services, introduced Marco as the preferred managed print services vendor and provided an overview of the recent managed print services request for proposal, which led to the selection of Marco by the evaluation team. I'm seeking a motion for approval of the offering a 5-year contract to Marco for district-wide managed print services and for administration to work with legal counsel to execute the final contract.
Second.
Questions? Any follow-up questions? If not, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving right along here. Agenda item 9. I would, ask the board, are there any board reports, growth and development reports that you'd like to share with the rest of the board? Any comments, anything that's happened? This is the time. If not, I'm going to turn it over to our legislative liaison. Mr. Sillers will deliver the legislative liaison update up to this point in time.
Yeah, my update will be verbal, unlike Mr. Webster's where he created a report. I have listed on the other sheet about our activities in the last, couple weeks. April 27th, I was, actually April 26th, I attended the Joint Finance Committee hearing that was in Minocqua just for an hour. It was extremely busy and a lot of people were waiting in line to speak. Many of them were talking about school funding from all over the Northwoods, and I think a couple came from Eau Claire and even Green Bay area had traveled up there to ask for the same things we have been asking for. Increased funding, obviously, for our special education students, and then just the per pupil thing. The next day on Thursday, I was in Madison for a different event, but did schedule visits with Representative Snyder and Spiros and Senator Tomczak's offices, and gave them a handout and then reiterated those things. And even this weekend, I was able to catch up with a couple other senators. Senator Mark Lane, that's co-chair of the joint finance. Spoke to him briefly about where the financing things were for schools as well. And that committee is obviously just going to run through their normal procedure. They're going to start voting in and out different packages the next couple weeks. So probably another week to two before they go after some of the new funding for school-related items. And we hear that in the news, so.
Thank you, Corey, appreciate that. Next item, superintendent comments?
Nothing to add, thank you.
And if I could have member liaison district activity report put into the official record, I greatly appreciate that. And at this time, requesting for a closed session pursuant to state statutes. Final notice of non-renewal, 19.851C, and consider adjournment to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.851C, F, and G, to consider employment of a public employee, to discuss personal history, specific individuals, where discussion may have substantial adverse effect upon the reputation. With that, I'm going to be calling for a motion. I'm seeking a motion to enter into closed session.
Second.
If I may have a roll call, appreciate that.
John Kreischer?
Yes.
Pat McKee?
Yes.
Jennifer Paoli? Yes. Joanna Reyes?
Yes.
Corey Sillers?
Yes.
Lance Trollope?
Yes.
Jim Boucher?
Yes. And with that, we'll be in closed session.